Hey photographers, Ben from TAFE, and I'm going to talk to you about a subject I used to really never have a lot of time for, but it's been growing on me lately, and it is HDR photography. First up, I have to apologise for not being a HDR fan. As a newspaper guy, rightly or wrongly, and I'm starting to think a bit wrongly, we sort of used to think of HDR as cheating, as a way of, we thought it really wasn't a true form of photography because it wasn't captured all with one click of the button, and the idea of newspaper ethics sort of means different things to different people. But for photographers at newspapers, that was the one thing we sort of had to hang on to, the fact that if you could capture it in one click, then you've done your job, or capture it in camera at least. That said, we always did sort of Photoshop, levels, curves, vignettes, that sort of thing, cropping. But, even then in Photoshop, you'd never sort of want to remove power poles or retouch skin or any of that kind of thing. So HDR always fell into that basket of you're a bit of a cheater. Now I'm not at newspapers. I'm sort of thinking HDR is not really about cheating. Sure, sometimes that sort of extreme hardcore HDR where the shadows and the highlights sit right next to each other hurts my eyes a bit, and I sort of think I wish that was a bit more subtle. But I think there's a valid argument for HDR in a fairly sort of subtle way. I don't have much love for the automated HDR sort of programs that just sort of you load files in and it spits out a result. I think there needs to be a bit more finesse to it, and I think you don't want to go over the top with it. That said, there's plenty of resources, and I'm always ready to relearn and change my thinking. So I'm happy for you to prove me wrong in this assessment and show me something really wicked with HDR. But what I'm going to show you now is just my sort of subtle take on HDR, and feel free to either adopt it or take it with a grain of salt and say, Ben, that's lame. You can totally push that further. But here we go. I'm in Photoshop, and I'm going to open up my 3 files which I've captured with my camera, and so let's do that. Here we go. Command O. HDR. Lovely. That's better. Alright, so I'm just going to OK this. It's talking about the different color spaces. There's one photo. OK. I like that warning. I could probably turn it off, but I think it's nice just to remember what's going on. Alright, so we've got 3 photos here. I've shot one as the sort of down the line zero compensation kind of photo. That's the camera's best effort at balancing the shadows with the highlights. And then I've pushed the camera with bracketing to a stop under, which is the camera actually trying to look after the highlights and sort of going, shadows, you can fall into blackness. And then I've pushed it a stop over, which has said, I want the details in the shadows and highlights be damned. Alright, cool. So that's what we've got, and we've got 3 photos there. And you can bring these in any sort of way you want. And you can now copy and paste them on top of each other to get your sort of your layers happening. Personally, I like to go up to Command F. No, sorry. I like to go to the File menu, and I like to go to Command F. I like to go into Scripts, and I like to go to Load Files into Stack. You can use this for a bunch of stuff when you want to get your images sitting one on top of the other. Here's our 3 photos here. Let's open them. And I like to tick this box to try and line them up on top of each other. If you shot this on a tripod, you probably might need to tick that because you know, nothing's going to move. I handheld this shot, so I'm going to tick that just to make sure everything lines up on top of each other. This is going to take a minute or two to churn out because my Mac's a bit older and because I'm screen recording a bunch of things. So I'll check back with you in a second when we're all good to go. Alright gang, we are back. We are in Photoshop and our photos have laid themselves precisely on top of one another, which is gold. They're not in the order I would like though. At the moment we've got what looks like, let's go one by one. Down on the bottom we've got the highlights layer. Above that we've got the shadows, and above that, by process of elimination, and we have the image where the camera's trying to make everybody happy, which is exposed down the middle. I want to make a duplicate of that layer because I do, and I want to drag that right down to the bottom and just keep it there, and let's call it, background. Sorry, my computer's a bit laggy today. That's okay, it's Monday, it does that. So that's going to be my background, and then I can sort of forget about that. I kind of dig having the shadow layer down the bottom, then I like having the highlights, and then this layer here is going to have a nice job to do in a minute. Alright, but let's just focus on our shadow layer at the minute. Essentially what I want to do is select the shadows, which are the dark, almost black bits, and black is a color, so I'm going to go up to, going to use the select color range option, and I'm going to click around and see what sorts of things happen. If I click on the leaves, you see how the picture changes, but I want the shadows, so I'm going to click in there, and that's going to make that representation over there with a sort of a white. Cool. It's always pays to drag the fuzzy around to see where your gut takes you. I'm feeling about 70 at the minute. Very good. So now I've got a selection, and that's selected the shadows, yeah? And now I want the shadows to butt up against the highlights, okay? So I'm going to select, turn on my highlights layer. That selection's still good, even though I'm working on the highlights layer, because, you know, selections, they don't necessarily attach themselves to layers, they work independently. And now I sort of want to mask away, the overexposed bits, so the highlights, yeah? So I reckon if I hit the layer mask button, throw black down on everything I don't want, and that's going to give us this kind of extreme HDR look, which is shadows and highlights hanging out right next to each other, with very little you know, difference in between. It's kind of like you know, the contrast is just being totally leveled out, and this is where we're at, which is a look. It's not my particular cup of tea, and so what I like to do to temper it, sort of even it all out, is enable the even image, which is the image with zero compensation, and I know at 100% opacity it cancels out the hard work we've done before it, but we get on that layer and we drag that opacity down, we can sort of temper it a bit. So extreme, less extreme, probably still too a bit extreme for my taste, but like I said to you before, I am very conservative with this, and extreme, nah, I still, to me, this mucky, nah, it's just, like I said, I'm a bit of a grumpy old man when it comes to this sort of HDR. Oh, okay. So at 80% opacity of the evened out image, which is letting 20% through of this sort of HDR look, I'm feeling happy. All right. That might be too conservative for you, but that's where it's good for me. So I'm going to select those layers. I'm going to Command G them, group them together, and let's do a little before and after. That's it with the that's the copy of the background where the camera was trying to even it out with zero compensation, and then that's sort of blended in a bit of HDR. You see how the shadows kick up here and the stairwell. There's a bit more detail and life to it. The contrast is sort of compressed down a bit, and that's my take on HDR